A wildlife photographer is stranded in the wilds of Yellowstone when his truck suddenly dies, leaving him helpless in the freezing wilderness. But the strange part isn't just the broken truck, it's what he notices through his rearview mirror. A massive pack of bears is approaching. Before continuing the story, tell me which city you're watching from. I want to know how far this video has come. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so I can send you exciting stories like this every day. No more waiting, the story begins right now. The autumn sun was setting behind the snow-capped mountains, casting long shadows through the pine trees. As a wildlife photographer with 20 years of experience, he knew being stranded here could be deadly. The temperature on his dashboard showed 28 degrees Fahrenheit and dropping. Jack reached for his satellite phone, but the screen remained black. Dead. He had been so focused on photographing the unusual bear activity today that he had forgotten to charge it. Looking through his camera's viewfinder at the photos from earlier, he noticed something that made him uneasy. The bears had been moving in patterns he had never seen before. Instead of their usual solitary behavior, they were gathering in groups, almost like they were organizing themselves. A movement caught his eye through the frosted windshield. At first, it looked like a shadow, but then he saw it clearly. A massive grizzly bear stood at the edge of the clearing, its breath visible in the cold air. The bear's behavior was odd. It wasn't foraging or moving through, it was watching, waiting. Jack's hands grew cold as he noticed more shapes moving in the growing darkness. His research truck was well stocked with supplies, food, water, emergency flares, and his expensive camera equipment filled the back. The nearest nature protection station was 4 hours away, but without a working phone or engine, it might as well have been on another planet. The forest had grown unnaturally quiet. No birds called, no small animals rustled in the underbrush. It was the kind of silence that experienced outdoorsmen knew to fear. Through his thermal imaging equipment, Jack detected more movement. The heat signatures showed bears approaching from different directions, their massive forms unmistakable against the cold background. This wasn't normal. Bears were usually solitary creatures, especially this close to winter. Something had brought them together, and his truck was sitting right in the middle of their gathering. As darkness settled over the forest, Jack realized the terrible truth. He wasn't just stuck in bear territory. He was surrounded by them, and judging by their coordinated movements, these bears were acting with a purpose he had never witnessed before in all his years of wildlife photography. The real question was why, and he had a feeling he was about to find out. Jack's hands trembled on the steering wheel as more massive shapes emerged from the deepening shadows. The bears moved with an unsettling precision that defied everything he knew about wildlife behavior. 3 grizzlies appeared from the northern tree line, their massive shoulders pushing through the underbrush. 4 more emerged from the east, moving like silent shadows in the fading light. Each bear weighed close to 1,000 pounds, their powerful muscles rippling beneath thick autumn fur as they positioned themselves with deliberate purpose. These weren't random appearances. The bears spread out methodically, and east at home, maintaining equal distances from each other as they formed the beginning of a circle around his disabled truck. Through his telephoto lens, Jack observed details that made his blood run cold. The bears were communicating through subtle head movements and body language he had never seen in his 20 years of wildlife photography. They worked with military precision, each bear knowing exactly where to position itself in the growing formation. A particularly large grizzly emerged from the shadows directly in front of his truck. It stood on its hind legs, reaching nearly 9 feet tall, its breath visible in the cold air. The bear's eyes seemed to glow with intelligence as it stared directly at Jack, swaying slightly as it maintained its upright position. The other bears adjusted their positions in response to this apparent leader, creating perfect spacing between themselves as they continued their encirclement. Jack's survival instinct screamed at him to act. His hands moved to the ignition, but the engine remained silent. The satellite phone on his passenger seat was useless, its battery depleted. Through his night vision equipment, he counted more bears joining the circle. 5 appeared from the south, moving in perfect coordination with the others. Their synchronization was unnerving, each bear taking precisely timed steps to maintain the expanding formation. The temperature inside the truck plummeted as the sun disappeared behind the mountains. Frost patterns formed on his windows, forcing him to constantly wipe them clear to keep track of the bear's movements. His headlights remained on, creating twin beams that illuminated the massive predators, but made the darkness beyond them even more impenetrable. The bears used these shadows to their advantage, sometimes disappearing into the darkness only to emerge in new, more strategic positions. What terrified Jack most wasn't the bears' size or numbers, but their patience. They showed none of the normal behaviors he would expect from grizzlies encountering a vehicle. There was no curious investigation, no signs of aggression, no attempt to search for food. Instead, they moved with purpose, their actions coordinated as if following a predetermined plan. Each time he shifted in his seat, the bears responded with subtle adjustments, maintaining their increasingly tight circle around the truck. The encirclement continued with mathematical precision. More bears emerged until 15 of them stood in formation, creating an unbroken circle roughly 30 feet from his truck. The large bear in front remained standing, seeming to direct the others through almost imperceptible movements of its head and shoulders. The other bears responded instantly to these silent commands, adjusting their positions with fluid grace despite their enormous size. Through his professional camera's viewfinder, Jack documented details that would later stun wildlife experts. The bears were using sophisticated positional awareness, maintaining sightlines with each other while covering every possible escape route. They had positioned themselves to account for the terrain, some taking slightly elevated positions on small rises, others securing lower ground near the tree line. It was as if they understood tactical advantage, using the landscape to strengthen their formation. The lead bear suddenly dropped to all fours, and the entire circle responded in unison. The synchronized movement sent chills down Jack's spine. These weren't 15 individual bears acting independently. They were behaving like a single organism. Their movements coordinated with impossible precision. The circle tightened further, and Jack could now see their features clearly in his headlights. Some bore scars from past battles. Others showed the signs of their long lives in the wilderness. But all moved with the same deliberate purpose. The temperature dropped further as complete darkness enveloped the forest. The only sounds were the bears' heavy breathing and the occasional crunch of frost under their massive paws. Jack realized he was witnessing something unprecedented in wildlife behavior, if he survived to tell anyone about it. The bears had created a perfect circle around his truck, and as the last trace of defoliate disappeared, they all turned to face him in unison, their eyes reflecting the glow of his headlights like 30 points of fire in the darkness. Sweat trickled down Jack's back despite the freezing temperature. He tried the engine again, pumping the gas pedal desperately. The starter whined but refused to catch. Each failed attempt seemed to draw more attention from the bears, their heads turning in perfect unison at the sound. The truck's battery was draining with every try, and Jack knew he had to conserve what power remained for the headlights. His hand found the horn, and he pressed it hard. The sound echoed through the clearing, but the bears didn't scatter as they should have. Instead, they seemed to press closer, tightening their circle around the truck. The large grizzly in front took 2 steps forward, its breath fogging in the cold air. Jack could see its muscles rippling beneath its thick fur, powerful enough to flip his truck if it wanted to. The radio crackled with static as he tried every emergency channel. His voice grew hoarse from repeating his location and situation. Only silence answered his calls. The bears had begun a slow, synchronized movement, taking 1 step forward every few minutes. The precision of their advance sent chills down his spine. Wild animals didn't behave like this. It was almost military in its coordination. Jack reached for his emergency flares. His hands shook as he loaded the flare gun. The first red streak shot into the sky, illuminating the clearing in crimson light. The bears didn't even flinch. Their eyes reflected the red glow. 15 pairs of eyes, all fixed on his truck, all moving with shared purpose. He fired another flare and another until he had only 2 left. Each bright burst revealed more bears emerging from the forest, joining the circle with the same eerie coordination. The temperature display now showed 20 degrees. Ice crystals formed intricate patterns on his windows, forcing him to constantly scrape them clear. Through his night vision scope, he watched in disbelief as the bears began alternating their positions. One would move forward while others shifted to maintain the circle. like pieces in some complex dance. Their behavior suggested a level of intelligence that defied explanation. Jack's survival training kicked in, and he began inventorying his supplies. 2 bottles of water, emergency rations for 3 days, a sleeping bag rated for sub-zero temperatures, and his camera equipment. His satellite phone remained dead, a useless piece of plastic in this desperate situation. He had always prided himself on being prepared for anything in the wilderness, but nothing had prepared him for this. The large grizzly that seemed to be leading them suddenly dropped to all fours. It moved closer to the truck, its nose lifting to smell the air. The other bears followed suit, each taking 3 synchronized steps forward. The circle was now barely 20 feet wide. Jack could see their breath in his headlights, could make out the individual scars and markings on their faces. Every instinct told him to panic, to run, but he forced himself to remain still and observe. Something about their behavior nagged at his professional instincts. They weren't acting aggressively. Their movements were deliberate but not threatening. It was almost as if they were trying to communicate something. The lead bear raised its head and made a sound unlike anything Jack had heard in his decades of wildlife photography. It wasn't a growl or a roar. It was something else entirely, and the other bears responded with perfect synchronization. The lead bear's call echoed through the clearing, a sound unlike anything Jack had documented in his decades of studying wildlife. It wasn't a growl or a roar, but something more complex, almost like a coded message. The other 14 bears responded with their own vocalizations, creating a pattern of communication that defied natural behavior. Jack watched through his camera lens, his professional instincts overtaking his fear as he documented this extraordinary phenomenon. Through his telephoto lens, he noticed something remarkable. The bears were taking turns looking over their shoulders, all in the same direction, their movements synchronized like dancers in a ballet. When one would turn to scan the western horizon, others would maintain their focus on the truck. They had established a rotating watch system, something that should have been impossible for wild animals. Their behavior suggested not just intelligence, but organized planning. The massive grizzly leading them suddenly performed a series of deliberate movements. It swayed its head in specific patterns, followed by 2 distinct paw gestures. The response was immediate and astonishing. The entire circle of bears shifted position, each taking 3 synchronized steps closer to the truck. But there was something different about their approach. They weren't closing in for an attack. Their body language showed no aggression, no predatory intent. Instead, their movements seemed protective, almost like they were forming a living shield. A new sound carried across the night air, barely audible at first. Jack's ears strained to identify it, but the bear's reaction told him everything. Their ears perked up simultaneously, and the entire circle shifted slightly toward the west. The lead bear made a low, rumbling sound, different from its previous calls. The response was immediate. The whole circle of bears took another coordinated step closer to the truck, moving as one organism. Jack's attention was drawn upward to the dark sky. Something was wrong. Despite the clear weather forecast, clouds were gathering with unusual speed. But these weren't normal clouds. They seemed too low, too thick, and carried a faint orange glow that grew stronger with each passing minute. The bears grew more agitated, their movements becoming more urgent. Their circle around the truck tightened further, and their heads kept turning toward the western horizon with increasing frequency. That's when Jack noticed the smell, a faint trace of smoke carried on the wind, growing stronger with each gust. His heart began to race as realization dawned. The bears' behavior, their coordination, their urgent communication suddenly made sense. They weren't hunting or attacking. They were reacting to something much bigger. Something they could sense long before human awareness could detect it. The lead bear suddenly slammed its paw against the ground, creating a thunderous impact that shook Jack's truck. The other bears responded by turning their bodies outward, facing away from the vehicle. In that moment, the truth became crystal clear. These incredible creatures weren't threatening him. They were trying to save him. Their complex movements, their sophisticated communication, their strategic positioning, all of it was a coordinated effort to protect not just themselves, but him as well. The orange glow in the clouds intensified, and in the distance, Jack heard the first faint sounds of cracking timber. The bears' behavior had evolved beyond anything documented in wildlife studies. They were demonstrating not just advanced social cooperation, but a level of altruism that crossed species boundaries. As the smell of smoke grew stronger, Jack realized he was witnessing something that would challenge humanity's understanding of wildlife consciousness. These bears had organized themselves into a rescue party, and their actions suggested they had done this before. The sky turned an apocalyptic orange as the truth revealed itself. Through his windshield, Jack watched in horror as an enormous wall of flames crested the western ridge. The forest fire moved like a living thing, consuming everything in its path. Ancient pines exploded into towers of flame, and the roar of the inferno grew louder with each passing second. Now he understood why the bears had gathered, why they had surrounded his truck. The massive grizzlies held their positions, their bodies forming a living compass. Each bear seemed to be calculating, assessing, planning. The lead bear turned toward Jack's truck and did something that shattered every preconception he had about wildlife behavior. It lowered its head, then deliberately raised it, pointing with its snout toward a narrow gap between the trees to the east. The gesture was unmistakably intentional, almost human in its clarity. Sparks began raining from the sky as the firestorm approached. The temperature outside the truck rose dramatically, turning the cold night into an infernal furnace. The bears remained steady, their massive bodies casting long shadows in the firelight. They were using their intimate knowledge of the forest, their ancient understanding of these lands, to show him an escape route. Jack realized he was witnessing something science had never documented. These creatures had organized themselves to save a human life. The lead bear moved to the side of his truck and did something even more extraordinary. It placed its massive paw on the driver's side door, not to attack, but to tap it deliberately. 3 distinct taps. The other bears began shifting, creating a corridor leading toward the gap in the trees. Their movements were synchronized, synchronized, purposeful. They were showing him the way out, communicating through actions that transcended the barrier between species. Through his night vision scope, Jack could see smaller animals fleeing through the corridor the bears had identified. Deer, foxes, and wolves all running together, their natural enmities forgotten in the face of the greater threat. The bears had positioned themselves to guide not just him, but all the forest creatures to safety. They were acting as guardians of the wilderness, showing a level of intelligence and compassion that would rewrite our understanding of wildlife behavior. The heat became unbearable as the fire drew closer. Jack watched in awe as the bears stood their ground against the approaching inferno. Their fur was singed by flying embers, but they maintained their positions, ensuring the escape route remained clear. The lead bear's eyes met Jack's through the windshield, and in that moment, he saw something that would haunt him forever. Understanding, awareness, intelligence that went beyond mere animal instinct. A massive burning tree crashed down behind the truck, sending a shower of sparks into the night sky. The bears reacted instantly, adjusting their positions to shield the escape corridor from flying debris. Their coordination was flawless, their purpose clear. They had created this circle not to trap him, but to save him. These magnificent creatures had organized themselves into a rescue party, risking their own lives to protect not just their forest home, but a human who had found himself in their domain. Jack's hands trembled as he gripped his camera, documenting what would surely be one of the most incredible wildlife encounters ever recorded. The bears weren't just exhibiting advanced social behavior. They were demonstrating a level of altruism and intelligence that would force humanity to reconsider everything we thought we knew about the consciousness of wild animals. Jack turned the key one final time, and miraculously the truck's engine roared to life. The bears immediately began moving in perfect formation, creating a living corridor through the burning forest. The lad bear, its fur singed from protecting the truck, took position at the front while others flanked the sides, their massive bodies serving as living shields against the approaching inferno. The precision of their movements suggested they had somehow planned this escort, understanding exactly how to guide a vehicle through the treacherous terrain. Through the smoke-filled darkness, Jack followed the bear's lead, his headlights catching their massive forms as they navigated through the chaos. The flames cast strange shadows, making the bears appear almost mythical as they moved through the burning forest. When fallen trees blocked their path, four of the larger bears worked in synchronized pairs, their enormous strength clearing obstacles with an efficiency that seemed almost rehearsed. Their coordination was incredible. While some bears cleared the way, others maintained a protective formation around the truck, watching for danger from all directions. The forest around them was transforming into an apocalyptic landscape. Ancient pines exploded into towers of flame as the sap inside them boiled. The heat grew so intense that the truck's temperature warning light began flashing, and the dashboard thermometer climbed past its highest reading. The bears, however, seemed to have an innate understanding of fire behavior. They led him through natural fire breaks, using ancient game trails and creek beds that offered the best chance of survival. Their chosen path followed watercourses whenever possible, using the landscape's natural features to protect against the advancing flames. The lead bear's intelligence became even more apparent as it guided them through the burning maze. When burning branches crashed down, the bears would respond instantly, some positioning themselves to shield the truck, while others quickly cleared the debris. Their fur was singed and smoking, but they never wavered from their protective duties. Jack watched in amazement as they took turns rotating positions, allowing each bear to move away from the intense heat when needed, while maintaining their protective formation. Other wildlife began joining their extraordinary procession. Deer ran alongside the truck, while wolves loped nearby, their natural fear of humans and vehicles forgotten in this desperate flight for survival. Even a mother moose and her calf fell into line with their unlikely caravan. A family of foxes darted between the bears' legs, somehow understanding that these normally fearsome predators were now their protectors. The bears maintained their escort formation, ensuring not just Jack's safety, but creating a path that other animals could follow. It was an unprecedented alliance of creatures, all moving together through the burning night, guided by the bear's ancient wisdom. The lead bear suddenly stopped, raising its head to test the wind. Without hesitation, it changed their course, steering the group away from a massive wall of flame that appeared through the trees. The other bears responded instantly to this new direction, adjusting their formation with military precision to guide the truck along the safer route. Their understanding of fire dynamics was remarkable. They seemed to anticipate how the wind would drive the flames, always keeping their group ahead of the fire's path. Jack's hands were steady now on the steering wheels as he followed these incredible creatures. His truck bounced over rough terrain, but the bears anticipated every obstacle, clearing paths before he reached them. They worked with an intelligence that defied everything he knew about wildlife behavior. When they reached particularly treacherous areas, the bears would test the ground first, ensuring it was stable enough for the truck to pass. Their problem-solving abilities went far beyond simple instinct, showing a level of cognitive processing that would challenge our understanding of animal intelligence. The smoke grew thicker, making it almost impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. The bears adapted to this new challenge immediately. They moved closer to the truck, their bodies serving as guideposts in the murky darkness. Their eyes, adapted to navigating in low light, never lost their way. They used their intimate knowledge of the landscape to guide the truck through areas where the smoke was thinnest, finding pockets of clearer air that allowed them all to breathe. As they pressed on, Jack realized he was witnessing something that went beyond a simple escape. This was nature revealing its deepest secrets, showing a level of cooperation and intelligence that humans had never documented before. His camera captured it all from the truck window, recording every incredible moment of this unprecedented journey. The bears weren't just saving his life. They were demonstrating that the natural world held far more complexity and consciousness than we had ever imagined. Through the thick smoke and dancing flames, a faint light appeared in the distance. At first, Jack thought it was another part of the fire, but the lead bear's behavior changed. Its movements became more purposeful, more urgent. As they drew closer, the light took shape, two distinct beams cutting through the darkness. The Nature Protection Station's floodlights pierced the smoky night, a beacon of hope in the burning wilderness. The massive grizzly leading them let out a low, rumbling sound that seemed to carry through the entire procession. The bears maintained their protective formation as they approached the station, their singed fur glowing in the emergency lights. More wildlife joined their extraordinary procession with each passing moment. Elk bounded alongside them, their powerful legs carrying them through the underbrush. Mountain goats scrambled over rocky terrain to follow their path, and even a pair of mountain lions slunk along the edges of their group. The natural order had been suspended, prey and predator moving together in an unprecedented exodus from the flames. A family of wolves ran close to the truck, their usual fear of humans forgotten in this moment of survival. Through his rearview mirror, Jack could see the full scope of what was happening. Behind his truck stretched a living river of wildlife, all following the path the bears had carved through the burning forest. Small animals scurried between the legs of larger ones. Birds swooped low through the smoke, following the convoy to safety. The bears had not just saved him, they had created a safe passage for countless forest creatures. Their ancient knowledge of these lands had turned them into guardians of the entire ecosystem. Nature protections emerged from the station, their flashlights dancing through the smoke. They stood frozen in disbelief at the sight before them. 15 massive grizzly bears were escorting a truck toward their station, leading a parade of wildlife that defied every natural law they knew. Some nature protections reached for their tranquilizer guns, but quickly lowered them as they realized what they were witnessing. This wasn't a threat, it was something entirely new. The lead bear stopped at the edge of the station's grounds, turning to face Jack's truck one last time. In its eyes, he saw something that would forever change his understanding of the natural world. There was consciousness there, awareness, and something that looked remarkably like satisfaction. The bear's gaze held steady, meeting Jack's eyes with an intelligence that seemed almost human. Steam rose from its fur where embers had singed it during their escape. As soon as Jack's truck reached the safety of the nature protection station, the bears began to move away. But they didn't leave immediately. Instead, they stood guard until the last of the animals in their rescued convoy had reached safety. They watched as deer bounded past, as foxes darted through, as every creature they had protected made it to secure ground. Only then did they begin to disappear into the fragments of forest that remained untouched by the fire, moving with the same coordinated purpose they had shown all night. The nature protections quickly surrounded Jack's truck, their voices full of disbelief as he emerged on shaking legs. His camera, clutched tightly in his hands, contained evidence of something that would challenge humanity's understanding of wildlife behavior. These bears had not only demonstrated advanced problem-solving and cooperation, they had shown compassion that crossed the boundaries of species. The night had revealed secrets about animal intelligence that would take years to fully understand. Behind them, the forest fire continued its destructive path, but its threat had been thwarted by an alliance of creatures that science would struggle to explain. The bears had not just exhibited extraordinary intelligence, they had revealed a depth of understanding about nature's interconnectedness that humans were only beginning to grasp. They had proven that in times of great crisis, the artificial boundaries between species could dissolve, replaced by a cooperation more powerful than any natural rivalry. In the days following the miraculous escape, Jack's photographs spread across the globe like wildfire. Major news networks broadcast the images of bears working together to save not just a human life, but countless forest creatures. His video footage showed moments of intelligence that defied conventional understanding. 15 grizzly bears coordinating their movements, clearing paths, protecting a truck, and leading a mass evacuation of wildlife. The scientific community was stunned. Wildlife researchers and behavioral experts flocked to the Nature Protection Station to interview Jack. His detailed accounts of the bears' problem-solving abilities, their coordinated movements, and their apparent understanding of fire behavior challenged everything known about animal intelligence. The footage showed bears testing ground stability before the truck passed, rotating positions to avoid heat exhaustion, and using complex communication systems previously undocumented in the species. The most compelling evidence came from Jack's thermal imaging recordings. They showed how the bears had created a sophisticated escape route using natural fire breaks and water features. Their understanding of fire dynamics and wind patterns demonstrated an intelligence far beyond basic survival instincts. The bears had not just reacted to danger, they had formulated and executed a complex rescue plan involving multiple species. As the forest slowly began to recover, Jack continued to document the aftermath. The bear pack remained in the area, now protecting the surviving wildlife as the ecosystem struggled to rebuild. They were seen guiding animals to untouched feeding grounds, sharing territories that would normally be fiercely defended. The Great Fire had changed not just human understanding of these creatures, but seemed to have transformed the bears themselves. Research teams set up observation posts around the recovering forest. They documented unprecedented levels of cooperation among the bears. The pack stayed together, something unheard of in grizzly behavior. They worked collectively to find food, protect vulnerable animals, and maintain the new social bonds formed during the fire. The lead bear, now easily identifiable by its distinctive fire-scarred fur, continued to display remarkable leadership qualities. Jack's final photograph from that extraordinary night became an icon of wildlife conservation. It showed the lead bear looking back at his truck, its eyes reflecting the firelight, its massive form silhouetted against the burning forest. The image captured something profound about the relationship between humans and wildlife. It suggested that there were depths to animal consciousness that humans had only begun to understand. The experience changed not just scientific understanding, but sparked a global conversation about wildlife intelligence and conservation. Legislation was passed to protect these remarkable bears in their territory. The scientific papers documenting the event revolutionized our understanding of animal cognition, suggesting that in moments of crisis, nature could reveal capabilities far beyond our previous comprehension. So, the story of the strange bears in Yellowstone comes to an end. But what we've witnessed is not just an ordinary rescue. These bears were more than just wild animals. They were warriors protecting nature, heroes in the wild world that we rarely recognize. Their actions have completely changed the way we understand wildlife intelligence and emotions. This story isn't just about the survival of one man. It's a powerful message about the love for nature, intelligence beyond species boundaries, and cooperation between creatures in this world. It's a connection between humans and animals, something we may have never truly understood. If you found this story fascinating and want to dive deeper into more extraordinary animal events, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Each week, we bring you untold stories and new discoveries about the wild world that you never imagined. Hit the subscribe button today, because the journey of discovery is never over.